Yeah, Steve Keeva, what a man. I remember meeting him at that first Alliance of Holistic Lawyers conference way back. I'd heard his name, and then he was just such a nice guy, and we had some chats, and we kept in touch over the years, really up to very recently. He's been very supportive. I have to admit, I'm a long-time meditator in my own right, but not the mindfulness approach. So when I saw his book at first, I thought, this is great. Lawyers really need this, but this isn't really my cup of tea. You know, I do a different style of meditation. Since then, I've actually started doing more mindfulness meditation. So I'm becoming a believer, if you will. But I thought, boy, what a gift to a lawyer to have the idea. Again, it's about education. You know? And I think it was great that the ABA published his book, because it comes along with, if I can say, some cojones already. You know, it's got the endorsement of the ABA, at least in some sense. What a great gift to lawyers that you're working along, you're feeling frustrated, the other lawyer just hung up on you, you're in with one of these adversarial negotiators, you know, your client is lying to you or wants you to do reprehensible things and screaming at, whatever it might be. You know, I was a litigator for 11 years. And then you have that idea, oh yeah, what did Keeva say? Oh, let me just take a breath and stop here and just notice how I'm doing. Just that moment of stopping and putting it down and noticing. Fabulous. And as I said, I've started doing a little bit of that in my personal restful practices as well, and it really does work quite well. The other thing, though, that really came up, met so many wonderful people at this conference. One was a woman from the University of San Francisco who teaches mindfulness in her classes to first-year law students. And she writes law review articles on mindfulness and all. It's wonderful. You know, teaching just a down-the-middle first-year class. Might be contracts, I forget. She'll forgive me. So we were emailing back and forth as I was doing the more recent research for this last paper for Washburn about how human nature needs to be recognized and integrated into law practice. You're a human. Let's get jiggy with this and let's do something about it. You know, I started thinking about mindfulness, and I realized, you know, mindfulness and other meditations, but certainly mindfulness should improve your sense of autonomy, that number one critical need, your sense of self. Because you stop for a minute and you notice, I'm here. Instead of being lost in the swirl of everything that's going on. So I thought, it should improve your sense of autonomy. I wonder, and I went and looked, and it turns out it's been researched. It's in scientific journals, and it does. It works. And so I have a short section in here for law teachers who are really, you know, want to go out there to the edge and think about some of these things. Certainly a lot of lawyers are picking up meditation practices now. I know I did a CLE 12 years ago, over 100 lawyers, and we went through a guided meditation. Freaked a few of them out, but overall it really was very effective. People could see, wow, when I'm quiet and restful, life is better, and I can work better from that platform. So there's a little section in here that cites the research on mindfulness and how it really does a lot of good things in this positive psychology framework, increasing the sense of autonomy, particularly in negative environments, is the finding. That it really helps people who are in non-supportive psychological environments to not only cope, but to have a good sense of themselves and to do all this. So I think Steve Keeva was really onto something early, to the point of getting it out to lawyers. I've heard about his book from countless lawyers who just volunteer, oh, have you seen that? Have you read that? So that was a great contribution.
I met Steve Keeva the first time in 1999 at the International Alliance of Holistic Lawyers Conference in Hawks Cave, Florida. It was a pivotal time in our movement, a time when a lot of people came together who'd been having ideas separately, and Steve really was the glue that began to hold us all together. There was this idea that his book, Transforming Practices, being associated with the American Bar Association, suddenly legitimized what we were doing in a way that I don't think anything else ever could. And so even though I don't remember much about that first meeting with Steve, I remember the buzz in the room. Everybody was so excited about that book. And so of course I got it, the book, immediately. And I read it and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, somebody has actually written down these things that are so important to be said. And then over the course of the next few years, I got to know Steve at various conferences. We would see each other at a conference pretty much every year, sometimes several times a year. And he was just so welcoming and so validating of me. I was really, in the early years, I was a new kid on the block. And as I gained stature through Renaissance Lawyer, I held him up still as sort of this icon of the movement, and eventually it got to the point where he was treating me like an equal, and it actually made me feel like what I was doing was important. I think Steve would laugh to think about that because he's a pretty humble man. He doesn't think he's very important. I don't think he really has ever gotten what a difference I don't think he ever actually knew the difference that he was making, even when people told him. As I've traveled and as I've spoken around the country, people have come up to me and said, I read Transforming Practices and it changed my life. These are people he's never met. Some of them told me that they found the book, abandoned in the courthouse, and other people have told me that they've left extra copies in courthouses so that it would be available to people. And I have one friend who said that she used to just carry it with her every time she went to a lawyer meeting so that people would recognize that she was someone that they could talk to about those topics. And they would take her out in the hall and they would say, "You read that book too?" And so the book really became a symbol of something that was just beginning to unfold when it was written, and it really was the ground that the rest of us built upon.
When I first became interested in teaching meditation to lawyers, Steve Keeva's book, Transforming Practices, I think had just been published. And it had a huge impact on me in terms of really clearly explaining how contemplative practices could help lawyers, and giving lots of terrific examples, which I've drawn on in my writing and in my teaching. Steve has a way of writing about the ideas we've been discussing here that brings a great clarity to them. And I found it terrifically helpful for working with students and lawyers to refer to his writing. And he's also been a good friend of mine since we first met, probably in 1998 or 1999.